When I played it as a kid, it was cool. When I went back and played it now, as an adult, it's not cool. So what's my opinion on the game? Hiya, I'm Aya, and we're gonna do a retrospective review of Tomb Raider 1 for the PlayStation 1, PC, GameCube, Saturn, etc, 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 that came out in 1996. If you like more content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel because we have retro reviews of many older games talking about, are they still good nowadays? Are they worth playing? Did they really stand the test of time? Well, for this game, Tomb Raider, let us go through it like we always do. So, a little bit of background. This game came out right after Resident Evil 1, being one of the first fully 3D'd, not completely rendered scenes for a game. It did have quite a bit of reach. So it started in Europe under Sega Saturn. In America, it was finally released in November on the PS1, Saturn, and PC, which is great. We currently played the one on PC through Steam, and it is god-awful when it comes to controls. And we'll get into that, obviously. How we normally do, we talk about story, gameplay, controls, sounds, graphics, everything. So let's see. This was one of the first Western games that actually made it over to Japan. It was good enough that Japan said, hey, we'll take it over. Which, at that time, you know, 1996, 1997, there were a lot of Western games that Japan adopted and took in. So this being one of the few that had made it means it's a pretty good feat, right? Like, it was rated pretty highly for its time. Considering that it's fully 3D and, you know, you have combat, puzzles, adventure, it's not bad.
I'm the high ground!
Let's go ahead and talk about the story a little bit. What is the story of Tomb Raider featuring Lara Croft? Well, it is. Lara Croft is our adventurer, badass, you know, tomb raiding, artifact finding character here. She's trying to like figure out where she's from and, you know, all of her backstory, right? She's hired by Nella to recover 3 artifacts. So we have it in Peru in these like mountains, which is the beginning of the game. She gets double-crossed and hires somebody else, so then you have to fight and figure out like all these other pieces. Apparently the artifacts have like some massive power and it's super dangerous, so she like destroys it, whatever, right? There's not a lot of like story, I believe. The cutscene at the beginning is kind of how you see like where the story begins and how you're hired and why you're going here. Your buddy gets murdered by wolves and then you get double crossed and like so there's cutscenes in areas that help with the story. They're fully voice acted, which is really nice. Other than that, the story is kind of just, hey, grab these things for this, and then you play through the story through the adventure caves, puzzle mazes, whatever the like thing is. Like if you're Atlantis or this cave in Peru, you know, each major section is primarily your adventure combat puzzle game, which is like semi-platformy, but not really, at least in my opinion. Let's just go ahead and get the gameplay out of the way because the gameplay is what's most important, I believe. It was considered a platformer in its day, but now it's not quite. So this game actually probably paved the way for most of our action puzzle games. Like Uncharted falls under that, Indiana Jones. So I feel like this was like revolutionary in how games became the way they are. When it comes to gameplay, there is quite a bit to do. There's a lot to explore. You know, the caves are vast and there's enemies that you can fight with your dual pistols, which is also pretty cool because you get to aim with the different ones if you know how to do it. If you're like me and are silly, you might have a hard time with that one. But you can aim 2 different guns in different directions and do different things, right? Which was kind of cool. I do believe that the enemies are mostly realistic in their environment. So we have wolves, bats, bears, things that would live in a cave, you know, that makes sense, right? And obviously there's like supernatural things and a T-Rex battle, which, you know, not so realistic, but hey, it's a game, right? When it came to controls of the game, it was very difficult. Control-wise, when you buy the game from Steam, you can either change your inputs so that you can play on a controller, even though it's not controller supported, or you have the ROM. But if you play with a PC, controls, they are not intuitive. If you are used to WASD for your running, jumping, being space, mouse right and left click for aiming and shooting, yeah, that's not this game. You use your arrow keys if you have a number pad, and that's what I was playing on primarily, is number pad. So you have 8, 4, 6 for 8 being moving forward, 4 and 6 turning your camera, 7 and 9 being sidestepping, so kind of like, yeah, like that. Yep. And then 5, kind of doing like a turnaround kind of thing in combination with jumps. You could do cool like side jumps, back jumps, forward jumps, you know, that's pretty cool. Jump is either Alt or the plus sign on the number key, which kind of, I don't know why it's Alt and not space, but space pulls out your guns, and so does 3 on the number pad. The period on your number pad will open up your inventory, which is really good to have inventory because man, did I take a lot of damage. And then enter is your major like interaction button. So if you go up to a lever, you can hit enter to interact with it. If you are using your guns, they're out. You can either use control or the number pad enter to shoot. It auto aims mostly, so you know, there is that. The game was built for obviously the old school controllers. So for PlayStation 1, we have the old school, and when I say old school, I mean like old school PlayStation 1 controller. So you had your D-pad, your X, O, square, triangle. You didn't have a stick, so your camera control was basically wherever your character is facing. So very outdated controls in this game. The combination of jumping and climbing, honestly, learning the controls is probably the hardest part of the game. It's not overly difficult to get through the game if you know how to use the controls. The puzzles aren't super hard. There's a lot to explore. There's secret things you can find, which is great. The combat is not super hard. Like a couple shots can kill pretty much everything. Compared to games in its time, like Resident Evil, it's not bad. I did look into some Resident Evil because a lot of you have asked for Resident Evil as part of the retro view, and I have not seen many good things about it, so we'll see about that one. So other than the super stiff controls and the camera being absolutely awkward and weird, you know, the game is not too bad. Let's just talk about the graphics, which is kind of like where a lot of the old games get a little bit of flack. So Tomb Raider graphically at first glance isn't bad. Like, I would say, like, cool, yeah, we have, like, bricks, that makes sense. We have some lush greens, you know, the characters and stuff like that have enough distinction, and you can really tell. The graphics aren't too bad. And then you look a little closer. And when you look a little closer, you'll notice that the rock textures are clipping. They took, like, real rocks to try to make it look realistic, and overall they did a decent job, but there are a lot of spots where you'll notice that it's basically the same thing over and over again.
Get the out of my sight before I demolish you.
Which, honestly, for the time, these graphics were great. Nowadays, yeah, right. You gotta be really forgiving when it comes to, like, reviewing older games, and I think to set the stage of what you're playing and like, the story of why you're there makes sense, right? You have rocky caves and, you know, everything kind of makes sense. You're kind of a polygon character, same with some other games that we have reviewed in 3D. And everybody, and I mean everybody, always talks about the cone, triangle, pyramid, booba. Just be what it be. Now, I will say, graphically, they have designed things fairly well. Like, Lara Croft is very distinct. You can tell who she is by her outfit alone, pretty much, you know? So, I guess when it comes to that, like, that's pretty good. When it comes to sounds...
No, Miss Jacqueline Natla does. From Natla Technologies. You know, creator of all things bright and beautiful.
Seal it, Larson.
Ma'am.
Feast your eyes on this, Laura. How does that make your wallet rumble?
I'm sorry. I only play for sport.
Then you'll like a big park. Peru, vast mountain ranges to cover, sheer walls of ice, rocky crags, savage winds, and there's this little trinket. An age-old artifact of mystical power is buried in the unfound tomb of Qualapec. That's my interest. You could leave tomorrow. Are you busy tomorrow?
Cutscenes being fully voice acted is great. The sounds make sense to what is happening. So like your steps, your shooting, enemies, makes sense, right? The only thing that I wish there was more background. Maybe like music or something. It's very quiet. For me, that's kind of a problem. Like, I have to have something else going on in the background. I can't focus. And honestly, music can really change how you feel about the game, right? Let's talk about replayability. I would say if you're gonna play these games, go ahead and play the remasters, not the originals. The remasters actually probably They have more intuitive controls. It's ported a little better. It looks a little better. They did some touch-ups to the graphics and everything. So if you want to play these old games, I recommend playing the remastered versions, not the originals. But if you want to replay it and you want to do some stuff, try to 100% it. After you've 100%ed a game and like done everything perfectly, I don't think there's much replayability. I also haven't seen, and I've done a lot of research and reading a lot of reviews of this, and overall people were like, I don't know if I really got that nostalgia hit. I don't think it's really like replayable, like it's really hard to get back into. So overall, the consensus on replayability of this specific version of the game is not super great. And I would have to agree, right? After going back and playing it, when I played it as a kid, it was cool. When I went back and played it now, as an adult, it's not cool. So what's my opinion on the game? I don't think the game is bad. I very much disliked the PC controls. They don't make sense at all. I feel like the PlayStation controller would have made this a little better, which is, you know, fine. I don't think I would go back and play this. If I'm gonna go back and play the games, I'm gonna go play the remastered. I will say this is groundbreaking. Like at the time, this was like really, really like good. And yes, the PC controls at the time that this game came out are kind of the original standard. I'm so glad they've changed since then, because first off, not every keyboard has a number pad. If you don't have a number pad, right, this game is very difficult because you have to play with your arrow keys, space bar, alt, control, enter. I just find it to be unintuitive in the sense of layout, right? So when I figured out that the number pad had all these buttons that I needed, it was a lot easier to manipulate and control my character. But before that, it was very difficult because I didn't know where my side strafes were. It just made things very difficult. And coming from playing PC games where spacebar is jump and WASD is moving, it was a steep learning curve. And I think my biggest gripe with the game is, in fact, the controls. So, did this game stand the test of time? Unfortunately, I have to say no. It paved the way for all the games that we know and love today, but it is not a game that aged well. I don't foresee, and I haven't seen a lot of people go back and play it for no reason, just because they want to. It's usually for a reason like, hey, I'm gonna do a review, hey, I'm doing a challenge, you know, stuff like that. So I will say, definitely not be-all, end-all great game. Unfortunately, it did not do what we needed it to do for standing the test of time. Overall, the game's not bad by any means, right? What is your opinion, though? Did you play this game when you were younger? Did you go back and play it at any point? Did you play the remasters and the originals? What is your comparison for the remastered versus originals? I want to know all about it, so why don't you tell me your opinion on the game and what you think about this game, looking at it from today in 2024. And as always, if you like this content, you want to support me. Yo, I just want to finish off the fucking YouTube video. As always, if you want to support me, you like the stuff I'm making, please consider dropping a subscribe on YouTube, comment, like on videos. Let me know what you want me to cover next. And always, I appreciate any kind of support you have. Thank you so much for letting me do this, and I hope to see you soon.